Now this one from Bellular is the WoW community hostile. It doesn't have 14 in the title, but he's been posting on here as he goes through that, so I don't know if he's going to relate to 14, but I have a feeling that what goes on in these communities probably has some parallels. So let's take a look.
We got Ashforth. Ashforth is super saying, I basically had to stop playing WoW after a couple of months of Shadowlands as the game reinforces the hostile community's nature and no other friends will play it. Expansion last 2 months for me. I think it's been like that for a lot of people, and I think, you know, yeah, the more you design the Mythic Plus system in a way where, you know, one person fucking up means that the person who owns the key gets punished.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, you do foster these situations where players are going to be really angry at each other.
Yeah.
That's tricky. That's tricky. I mean,
I think reinforce is the right word. I don't think either game has made its community. They didn't get to pick what players downloaded it. They didn't get to pick what players chose around. They didn't get to line us up and evaluate our moral and ethical backgrounds and how we're feeling that day and decide if we're allowed to play their game. They took the money from all of us. I think reinforce is the right word. I think that when a community sets a set of goals and objectives, the path by which you get to those and the path by which you interact with other players reinforces when certain behavior pops up. When that becomes the path of least resistance, that's when it encourages a feedback loop. That same player in a different game might act differently because of the way the game is designed.
Things I do like, you know, that they're fixing up, like, you know, if you're in a Mythic Plus group in the new season 2 of Shadowlands, and you're in a part of a run that increases someone's Mythic Plus rating, you'll get bonus valor.
Oh, yep.
Like, that's a great example of actually being helpful to a less experienced player. Is good for you. It gives you some more rewards. So I think more stuff like that's good. And certainly, yeah, the more the Blizzard are focused on designing the game the way that they are and not having as great casual content in the game, I think it will be a less friendly spot for people who are playing A, casually, and B, not in a guild. Because when you're not in a guild, you know, yeah, you can do your few dungeons, whatever, have some fun. But if that's the only way you can play the game, then you really are forced, you know, that's the only thing you can do to have fun. So you run into those toxicity problems and you don't have other forms of content to pace break that. So, yeah, I think that big true for a lot of people, and the reason why the 2 months is just the honeymoon and is that thing. I will say Shadowlands' launch gearing was better than Legion, and it was better than BFA.
Yep.
Just being able to hop into some BGs with the boys, get some gear.
Pretty poggers, like.
Pretty poggin. Pretty poggin. Now, the rest of it, I'm not going to say is, you know, super better than Legion or whatever, but, you know, just that one aspect, like the initial Shadowlands just really hit well. I think it was just an issue of, you know, the extensibility and, you know, how long their systems would last. So, yeah. Tyler Lindsay DeLise said, nearly missed the stream. I wanted to know how I can get into WoW as a new player. Keep on looking, and it seems designed around only like 10% of the game. I want to play all of it. Right now, I would basically just say, level up characters, have some fun. If the cosmetic stuff is something you're drawn to, get into that. But right now, the game basically is designed around the patch. You play the patch, not the expansion. Broadly speaking, in World of Warcraft, that is essentially the situation you're dealing with. Now,
I think there's a little more to it than that. I think you're going to need certain communities to guide you into other forms of content. It definitely, the poster child is the current patch. But you've got to remember that, like, when a seasonal event goes on, let's say the Halloween event or something, it's going to invite you to go explore the world of Warcraft as a new player. Go see these other zones. And when you're in them, you might notice that there's something else going on that you didn't catch as you were leveling because you weren't required to go there. You may notice some of these other things. You may pop through your garrison in WoD and wonder what else is locked behind the garrison. When you click on a player that's riding a mount, a feature I really like about World of Warcraft is that they have a buff telling you what mount that is. So when you open up the mount screen, you can search for that mount and see where it comes from. And so I think there are invitations to go expand what you do as a new player and welcome you into that. I think that the community documenting it is harder to find because most of the players have already done all that or know all that because it's such a long running game. And so you've got to find those content creators that are happy to kind of introduce you to whatever part of the game it is you want to know more about. Final Fantasy literally just had a meme video go out and say, like, basically say all 14 creators do is talk too long about too little. We talk about how long the global cooldown is. We talk about the game being hard for new players to get through ARR. We talk about all this content there is to do besides, raiding, and we keep on this broken record repeating the same subjects. And the reason that we do that is I know that at least for Brian and I, people keep asking. We regularly have people come in and say, hey, is it okay to start Final Fantasy right now? I'm like, well, I just put a video up last week that said it was okay then. Yeah, but like, is it okay now though? And so there's never an end to people asking, yeah, but what about now? That video is 6 months old. What about now? And so we keep making those posts because we need them to keep being time-stamped and talk in a way that welcomes people in. And so Brian and I have chosen to act as that. And so you've got to have content creators that welcome people into games. WoW, the WoW directory is massive. And so to scroll down past the people that have 1,000 people watching them, 500 people watching them, that's where you're going to find people that are new player or more capable of responding to chat in real time, where even your own chat, you don't see it just blow by. And so, as a new player, if you're looking for something more cozy, then that's what you need to find. If you want to get good at making gold, then there are gold making communities with people like Want to Buy Gold or Persephone or the Lazy Gold Maker. There's a number of them out there that are more than happy to introduce you, and they actually play the game as a whole. Many of them have raided or do raid. Many of them have leveled alts and have done all these things, so you can ask them questions well beyond that. And so I think that getting introduced into the game, if you're asking about what the people are currently talking about, of course the current players that have already cleared everything you're just getting to are talking about what's new. It doesn't mean that there isn't somewhere for you to get plugged in. I think it's just easy to get drowned out in the noise.
That said, you can go to expansions like Legion and you can get really deep into their collection content and some of their goals, like the class order halls, things like that.
Yeah.
That's good things to do. But yeah, it is quite designed around repeatable, instanced end-game content.
And this is a complaint about both Final Fantasy and 14, especially for veteran players, because a lot of times what we hear from the devs is that it's too expensive to build new content at the pace we consume it, that it takes too long, right? And it's not just a money thing when I talk about expense. I'm also talking about time, because that's where that developer phrase that gets thrown around as a not always perfect parallel, that it takes 9 months to make a baby, but 9 people can't make a baby in 1 month. It just takes time. It takes time, it takes money, it takes practice, and we consume it in 1 or 2 go-rounds, and then we ask for something else. And they're like, well, that took me months. So one of the frustrations in these games is that they're always talking about the pace at which they have to develop new content to keep up with the current player base, but they do let a lot of past content fall and die. And so they have this huge backlog that they kind of use through Final Fantasy's roulette system and irregular tombstone events, and World of Warcraft uses it through these rotating time walking events and seasonal bosses in some of the dungeons, and leveling alts through Chromie time. They have it, they're aware of it, but it can be very frustrating when you're saying, I'm not asking for something new, I'm asking for you to help me have a fun and new and engaging way to use your existing stuff. If you're saying it's too hard to build something out of scratch, then don't build it out of scratch. You got a whole bunch of content over here collecting dust on a shelf. And so I think for new players getting in, there are ways to invite people into new content because it's new to them and it counts as new. And that can be not only new players, but people who are simply new to a piece of content. Inviting a veteran player who's never chocobo raced into chocobo racing is really interesting because they've never seen that. And now there's this whole system. And so going back and giving love to previous systems as a way of just saying, hey, we added 5% to that, go back. Yokai Watch this last time around as a collab event in Final Fantasy XIV added some new stuff to it. And because of that new stuff, many people went in for the first time and cleared the old stuff. And so when you talk about a ton of massive amounts of dungeons and raids and mounts and minions and these people you can grind reputations with, and you can go out in the world and you can unlock minions and emotes and all of this stuff, I shouldn't have to download an add-on called All the Things to know it's there. Guild Wars 2 struggles from content droughts in a way that World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy should really be appreciative of what they have. When they're like, well, it's been like a month longer than I wanted, or 2 months longer than... Guild Wars like, oh, you're still speaking in months? Months? If it's not years, why don't you chill out? Guild Wars 2 has had massive content droughts. But they have designed the new player experience and the veteran player experience in a lateral progression way that allows there to be old content system that functions as freestanding silos and invite people in. Now, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy fundamentally at the ground level work differently with a vertical progression system that has the ceiling raised every 2 years. But that doesn't mean there can't be lateral progression systems. Why do old relics in Final Fantasy not give me some achievement that makes teleports cheaper in that expansion? It doesn't matter, but it would encourage me to go back and grind relics. You get a stacking 5% buff for teleports. Oh my gosh, next expansion will be the first time we've had 20 battle jobs. If Blue Mage gets a relic next expansion, we would have a theoretical ability to make a Realm Reborn teleports free. But I would have to grind 20 Realm Reborn relics. Huh. Now, if I don't do it, relics will cost me an amount of money that doesn't matter. And if I do dump hundreds and thousands of hours into this, I will save myself an amount of money that I could make in minutes. But it's a goal to get for. I want that buff. Let me get it. Let me go chase things that don't matter. You put a pterodactyl mount in Final Fantasy XIV behind grinding 5.5 million experience within the Ishgard restoration system, equally split across 11 jobs, which of course some you're going to overshoot. Do I need it? No. Do I want it? A little bit. Go reward people for going back and taking advantage of your game in optional ways. Optional. What if I could have a Hearthstone that opened up a list of destinations in World of Warcraft, and the way I unlocked destinations was by going back and getting everything from a zone, big meta achievements. Have you done all the farming achievements from Band Area? Oh, you have? Did you do all the gardening achievements from the Garrison? Really? That's interesting. Have you cleared this random set of quests from Vanilla? Very cool. Here's a weird tool that just does that. I think it's just frustrating to see these games get known for communities that are fostered in a certain way when it's how the content is presented, not the amount of content available.
And I think the fundamental thing, if you're a new player, work out, is that what you're in for? Is that what you want to do? If it is, great, dive into that. You'll have a lot of fun, and WoW, that's really what they're designing it for at the minute.
Yeah.
If you want that very broad, casual experience, but you're an experienced World of Warcraft player and you've already got a lot of those goals from older expansions, I will admit you're going to have a tougher time to get a lot out of WoW these days. But if you're a newer player and you have that sort of goal, well, the good news is you haven't got those Legion collection things yet. You haven't, got your Garrison transmog set from Warlords of Draenor yet. You haven't farmed up those old raids. You haven't, done whatever. So there's actually plenty to do outside of the current expansion. You can play like Asmongold, right? I mean, dude's going back to Mists of Pandaria dungeons to get a weapon that's a 0.1%. I wouldn't recommend you do that. But, dude's completionist. He wants to get all that stuff. And, unlike Asmongold, if you're a new player, you don't have an extremely impressive all the things. By the way, all the things is an add-on that just collates how much of all of the things that you could get, how many did you have. So, I think that's basically my thought.
Yeah, no, I have too many thoughts to go into on World of Warcraft as a new player, so I will be respectfully silent.
From Return to Orc Monkey. I don't know what that means.
Well, you know the return to monkey memes.
Oh, monkey.
Return to monkey memes. No, what the
Not
fuck? Do you go online?
No.
Jesus Christ.
Sometimes. He said, to counter the bit of negativity you've gotten, I'm thrilled you're enjoying 14, and as a 14 player, I sincerely hope WoW returns to form so players can enjoy it again too. Thank you, and yeah, me too. You know, I want to play FF for the best of FF, WoW for the best of WoW, and have a great time overall. I think right now what we need is WoW to step up to the plate a little bit more, be a little bit less abrasive to its players.
Yes.
And it was another, like Laser Eye dropped a super saying, your talks inspired me to try FF. I love WoW Classic, but I hate retail. It is sad I had to go to a 13-year-old version of a game to enjoy it. That's it. I mean, look, I think they've consciously made World of Warcraft a very different game, and that does mean that the target audience of WoW has changed. I do hold the belief that WoW is now designed as a slightly more niche game than it used to be in the past.
Yeah.
And that a lot of what's going on here is basically the ramifications of that. And I'm not entirely sure how aware Blizzard are that they've made WoW smaller in terms of its overall appeal based on the fundamental design of the game, in that they're focusing a little bit more on sort of the M+E style of gameplay and that sort of thing, and everything being about player power in the way that's, you know...
I don't think that was their goal. I think their goal was to continue inviting more and more people in and holding up as a shiny gem at the top of the mountain one piece of content. And I think people assume the game's gotten smaller. When you look at the changes around things like being able to opt basically on and off a PvP server with war mode, when you look at the quality of life changes around the ability to pick up groups or adding difficulties like LFR over the years, when you look at the continued scaling of World Quest so that it's easy to catch up to a casual level of gearing. If you started brand new today, you're not locked out of Mythic Plus. You can catch up very quickly. When you look at... I think they have tried to make it wide-reaching. I think that the problem is that if you don't know what your core values are and your goal to satisfy everybody, right? You're running a taco stand, and your goal to make a taco that satisfies everybody, you've gotten to a point where you're now making hamburgers and fish sandwiches and salad and all this stuff, and you're not really good at those. And so if you go back and watch the history of McDonald's, there was a point early on where they weren't controlling what their core... What are they? They are a burger joint. That is what they do. For a number of years, they were held up as like this terrible, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're unhealthy. They were never supposed to be healthy. They were selling shakes, Cokes, fries, and hamburgers. Well, it's not like we suddenly revealed that a salad place was secretly injecting fat into the lettuce. Like, this should not be shocking news. I think that they, through the process of losing their own identity, have isolated it. And because they continually chase it, they change a lot from expansion to expansion. Destiny 2 has this issue where there's 100 people that like the idea of Destiny 2, and they say, hey, tell us a little bit more, because us 100 people all want different things. And so some portion of us are going to line up with what you, the devs, want. And they point over here and they say, this is what we want. And it cuts the player base down by some percentage. Okay, that group is really happy. They're supporting you monetarily. It was never going to be all 100. The other portion go, wish you the best of luck. I'm going to play something else. Maybe I'll dabble, but I'm probably not your kind of gamer. That's okay. Then Destiny 2 says, oh my gosh, those guys are important. We got to catch those guys. And they look so far over to catch those guys that they swivel the whole game over here, which some of those people they don't pick up because they already decided to play something else. But they definitely pissed off this group way over here. Now there's overlap that's fine with both versions, but they've swiveled back and forth and back and forth. World of Warcraft is guilty of this as well. Every single expansion, people complain that WoW doesn't innovate or listen. Actually, I think they innovate too much. Look at the system changes from Shadowlands over BFA, BFA over Legion, Legion over Warlords of Draenor, Warlords of Draenor over Pandaria. Now go look at Final Fantasy. We are still collecting tomestones for gear. We are still collecting raid tokens for gear. We are still clearing... I mean, it is 2 tomes in a raid is a meme within the community. What do we get in this patch? 2 tomes in a raid. That's an odd-numbered patch. You're getting a 24-man. It's an even-numbered patch. You're getting the raid. It's so basic They know what they do, and they spend all of their innovation energy on doing that thing differently. Not a new thing, that thing. And that is where the vast majority of their budget lays. Now, the remaining 10% goes to innovation. That's where we get systems like Blue Mage that come in and then haven't been updated. That's where we got systems like Deep Dungeon that were put in twice and then let go. Apparently, they say, hey, players wanted that so much, we can bring it back. So that innovation is kept as these side systems, these lateral systems, often to the optional, where you can add something like Chocobo Racing, Lords of Verminion, jump puzzles, and you never have to add them again because they were never core to the game. But you've got a core foundation that we can all stand on, and it's not shaking every time you change. You're saying, hey, we're going to do something different this time around. Oh, really cool. I'm looking forward to that. But the ground that we're standing on, the basics, is right there. The basics stays in place. In World of Warcraft, if you try to tell somebody how to gear in vanilla over on Classic, and they're a retail player, it's a whole new learning progression. Then they go into the Burning Crusade. Shifts a little bit more. But Shadowlands is so different. That's okay, that's okay. It's probably just a recent thing. Let me go back and play Warlords of Draenor. Nope, way different. Let me go back and play Mists of Pandaria. Wait, what is Reforging? If we got to play a classic version of every single expansion, it is 9 different games. You have got to have something in common, something that we can cling to as a core-based system. And the people that don't like it, you've got to let them go. So I think they've made their game smaller by trying to go way too wide.
Torghast. So yeah. We've got a super from Shafe. Wow. 55 euro super from Shafe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
He said, cheers, guys. Quit WoW a month ago. Thank God. Started FF a week ago and finished A Realm Reborn yesterday. The more I play this game, the more obvious...
Don't say thank God. Don't. Be aware of what quitting World of Warcraft means for a lot of players. There are people that feel good riddance. And if they say, really glad I just quit WoW, you can say, good, I'm happy for you. There are people that are coming to Final Fantasy not because they wanted to, but because there is an emotional loss there. They are giving up 15 years of a relationship with a game that has defined a big portion or all of their gaming experience. Be respectful of that loss. Be aware that some people are still in a portion of the grieving process. They're not quitting WoW because they want to. They're quitting WoW because they're feeling pushed out of a community that they thought was theirs. This is not them leaving because they changed. This is not them leaving because they're ready for something new. This is them leaving because for some players, they don't feel there's any choice left. Be really respectful that everybody is leaving WoW for different reasons right now. That for the people that are staying and for the people that are leaving, that is a personal choice. The little thank gods, the little I'm trying 14 for the first time from WoW, oh, isn't it so much better? Just be aware of how that might feel depending on where they're at. And so I think he might be reading it verbatim, but I do want to address it. So if he read it as a comment, I just want to address it real quick. Bellular, I think, has been fairly respectful on the matter. I think there's been a long journey for him. Matt, of course, playing both games, has been fairly respectful. But I just want to stop in the middle of this post and address the people who read that as confirmation that all people who quit WoW are saying good riddance. I'm not seeing a lot of super chats in here from people that are sad to quit WoW to try 14, but I know they exist. I know there's people who are feeling loss. And while it is just a game, it's something that's represented a huge portion of their free time. They've had communities in it. They've had fond memories in it. And to see that chapter close, even if it makes way for a new chapter. When I graduated college and I moved out of that town, I didn't want to stay, and I haven't wanted to go back. It doesn't mean there wasn't sadness, right? And so I'm seeing down here, you guys are telling me at the bottom it says, thank God. I'm seeing that person says that. I just want to note, not everybody feels this way down in the bottom right. Not everybody reads that. So I just want to note really clearly, not as an accusation of anybody, not saying you're a terrible person if you've done that. I just want to remind people that not everybody feels thank God in parentheses. So I just want to note that this is a different journey for everybody. Some people are just coming to try it. Some people are just coming to visit. be really respectful of other people's journey through games.
It seems to me how WoW isn't up to its game anymore. Glad you got me into an MMO where I can genuinely have fun. Well, I'm glad you're genuinely having fun in a game. That's fantastic. And yeah, from what I understand with A Realm Reborn, it's like slow. Oh, hey, oh.
Yeah.
And then as you go on, then you're like, hit the expansion, and it's that Vince McMahon thing of him just going, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They once they feel comfortable, they just kind of like they're testing out the car in 2.0, and then they're like, right, let's see what this baby can do. Boom.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be great having a weekend off. I can play loads of FF and actually get my warrior up to snuff. And getting the expansion so I can finally get it. We got from CW who dropped a super saying, do you think they're partially bringing classic WoW versions in preparation for a massive old world revamp in retail? I don't think they're doing it for that reason.
No.
But as much as a bit of me would be surprised because it's loads of work, there's another bit of me that wouldn't be surprised if they did an old world revamp because it would be just so fucking cool. Just in principle.
I mean, it's been 11 years since the last one.
Oh yeah, the Kata leveling content is older than the vanilla stuff was when the vanilla stuff was revamped.
By a significant margin too.
It's just that sort of thing. Blizzard need to find out. They need to find a reasonable art style for the old world that's not extremely expensive to create content in.
Yeah.
Not art style, but level of fidelity and principles that's acceptable. Because if you decide it's time to remake all of World of Warcraft, but up to the graphical quality of like Bastion and Revendreth, that's going to...
Have you guys ever seen any of your favorite older games, especially the live service games where you're still playing those games right now, when fans go and rebuild a single screenshot in Unreal or rebuild a single zone, but it is, I mean, it's unreal. It's absolutely mind-blowing what modern software and modern hardware and all of the advancements people have made in getting better at understanding lighting and modeling and how fast they can work. The tools, the capabilities of the hardware, and the capabilities of the people have moved so far forward from Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft that one of the reasons people call for an engine overhaul is not that they want to see the game thrown into the bin. It's that when you look at what can be done now, especially with the resources that both Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft have to bear, is if they could somehow justify this complete remaster of the game, where they said, hey, 7.0 Final Fantasy is going to take place in Thanalan, and we're going to rebuild all of Thanalan for both new players and old. They could take it so far that it would literally make the rest of the game feel bad. Like, they could take it too far. And so unless they were really ready to take on all of it, which is way too big of an undertaking, it's crazy. People can do this stuff with add-ons to some degree, where they're going in and they're applying shaders to games. But what can be done with an add-on, especially when you talk about things like security and stability on the client side, not every creator can make native. They can't necessarily support that. If that does something that makes your game crash more, they can't release it. They can say, hey, that's your choice, but if it gives you a bad experience, you blame that third-party thing. But it's really crazy. It's absolutely mind-blowing to see where these games could be. But just know that wherever they could be in 2021, if we fast forward 15, 20 years into the future, it'd be the exact same conversation. So the question of when and how to move forward is a really big one.
It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money.
Definitely.
We got Sue's Fruit. Again, drop a super saying, recently I feel like Western game developers act more and more like they are rock stars, putting their ego before the fans instead of growing a game and community with the players together. I 100% agree with that feeling, that vibe going on. I think it absolutely sucks. But I do think, between the Kickstarters, many indies, there's a turning tide there. It's no longer like, hey, this AAA game is manna from heaven given to us by the rock stars who made it. I think that's becoming less and less, and that's perhaps why Blizzard sometimes feel like a big outlier.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's weird because you will see a lot of indies that are doing the we're rock stars thing. There's one in particular which I'm not going to call by name because it's a little bit unfair, but there was a little bit of discourse around it, where the dev was basically saying things like they're stepping into a genre, and they're immediately coming in, shooting at all the things in the genre, going, no, I'm going to fix all the problems this genre has, And you're like, if you think those are genre problems that people have been talking about for 20 years, you're not doing the genre justice, because you need to understand it. It was someone talking shit about like the whole turn-based is bad.
Right.
Turn-based is bad. You know, I'm not going to do the same thing all those other shitty old turn-based games did.
Yeah, I think genres get pretty big. MMO doesn't even mean MMORPG anymore. There was a time where they were roughly synonymous, and they aren't. And we still use it within this community, but it's not necessarily fair to the other large experiences out there like Fortnite that are not RPG-based, but are a massively multiplayer online experience that feels communal and feels real to those players. I think that the MMORPG genre has included anything that's role-playing on a massive scale. And so role-play on a massive scale feels really different when you talk about something like ESO or Guild Wars, or when you talk about something like EVE Online, or when you talk about something where there's an RPG element with a slight kind of Dark Souls-esque, game where you talk about something like Elite Dangerous, where these impacts are more felt. Is No Man's Sky like that? Am I playing through as a character and then the other player's impacts are these shadows? Is Death Stranding an MMORPG? There's these moments where the framework gets really tested and what gets defined in a genre. And does something have to be good at that genre to be considered that thing? I've heard comedians comment on that. Do you have to be funny to be a comedian? Or can you just be failing at it? You're just bad at comedy. Does it have to be the thing? Mike Kaplan has a whole bit on that. And I think that MMORPGs, a lot of times, because of the amount of time they take, we only get to taste a small percentage of the thing. Or if we're going to taste a large percentage, we only get to taste a small percentage of each game. People who jump around and become these experts on the genre tend to actually miss a lot of the nuance in any one game. Especially if that one game does something that's atypical for the genre. So if they're used to covering the genre in one way, and they come in and they run it through the same paces, the same test. Other games have taken me anywhere between 20 and 100 hours, and then I have to spend an additional 10 hours on PvP, 5 hours on learning the cosmetic system. I have to go spend 25 hours watching all the most viewed content creators, and then I go read all the top Reddit posts, and then I'm ready. And that works for this game, and then you miss one. And that's where you have these YouTube creators that get big backlash from a community when they come into a space and they try to release a video that says, here's how I judge this game based on the way I've judged all other games. But that view of that standardized testing that you ran it through doesn't really put that game in its best light. And so those players feel slighted by the grading scale. You're saying my game is bad because you tested it against these metrics. Those aren't the metrics this game is aiming to satisfy. And so it's not bad, you're just doing it wrong. And so it can feel, it's a massive, massive genre. And so a lot of times when we're talking about this, we're talking about MMOs in the top 10. We're talking about MMOs that we've heard of and we didn't even play. But there are MMOs we've never heard of that still affected hundreds of thousands of players. Especially when you talk about ones that don't make it. When you talk about ones that come out and later on the servers are shut down. And so it becomes really, really hard when you have games that are held to a metric that maybe they weren't really designed to hit.
Which was not be fun. They're like, well, have you tried engaging with turn-based as a thing that can be fun? But then I just have this whole big anger in my head of how everyone in Western media is like, turn-based is shit. Look at this game being actiony, it's so much better. That's how you get Final Fantasy 15. To be fair, it's also how you get Final Fantasy 16, but it's how you get Final Fantasy 15, and why, a Persona game which has decent turn-based combat, or an Etrian Odyssey, or a Seventh Dragon, or a Shin Megami Tensei only come around once every fucking full moon.
Yeah.
That was a tangent.
Yeah, fun.
Some of his thumbnails and titles are interesting topics, but they haven't been quite accurate to how flowing this discussion begins. I think that a lot of what makes these communities something that being defined by this, are these games good? Are they bad? Are the players welcoming? Are they not? Is it a good place for new players to be? I think a lot of it just goes back to expectations not meeting reality. I think when you have a game that sets a set of expectations and then puts players from all different backgrounds with their own expectations into that, and doesn't bother to up front go through the pain of saying, hey, just letting you know that that this isn't going to be quite what you expected. That can be really hard on the front end. You know, if you want a friend to come be involved in something you're doing, and, you know, if you want them to come to a party at your house and you know they don't like a certain type of food or a certain person that might be there, to get them there, you might choose to omit that. But you're kind of doing them a disservice, because now down the road, you're kicking that can down the road. And when they show up and it's not what you set out as the expectations, whether you knowingly or unknowingly omitted those facts, you're creating friction, right? When reality turns out different. And so stopping and exploring those expectations and setting those really firm on the front end is something I think Final Fantasy does a really good job with. And I think that they set systems in place where casual dungeons are expected to be casual. And in WoW, there are people running dungeons because they need the clears on an alt right now. And so you can't judge them based on item level, because they're good at the game and they just need to blow through this clear. They know this dungeon like the back of their hands. And you have other people who seem to be pretty well geared, but that's their first, they just joined this game and they don't know the things you know. And so they're not playing particularly well. They've never been informed on the mistakes they're making, and they're maybe not in a mood right now to look to improve. And so when those two people get put in a party, and one needs to clear it for one set of reasons, and another needs to clear it for another set of reasons, and WoW said, well, I don't want to tell people how to play. I don't want to tell them the right way for this content to be consumed. I understand that desire, and in some cases it is the right one. But you are setting up a situation where it is not uncommon for those players to then have very different realities meet their expectations, and that gap there creates friction. And they both blame the other one for that being the case, and they both leave your game unhappy. So when I see toxicity in the community, a lot of times it gets associated with the player base. A lot of times it's like, well, this set of people, the kind of people that play this game, this monolith of people that like this game, I don't think that's entirely there. I think that it's a mix. It's a dialogue. We as the community communicate, and the devs communicate. It's why you guys have seen me get frustrated at leaks in the past, because leaks sometimes set expectations that aren't real. And it's not that I haven't been guilty in falling into them. Recently, you know, we've been talking a lot about 558, but just as a reminder, it's never been verbally confirmed that for a fact 558 will have data center visit. It's been stated that might be the sort of thing in it, and it's been leaked that would be what's in it. But if it's not, they didn't lie to us. We as the community set up a set of expectations that the reality that they've known behind closed doors the whole time may not deliver on. The difference is that's an exception in Final Fantasy, and that seems to be the rule in World of Warcraft right now, where expectations get to run free. And I just feel like over and over I'm harping on communication. The community is hostile because the game says, well, it'd be hard to fix. It'd be hard to set up tools where people could establish their expectations on the front end. And when they do try to engage with it, they're like, well, what if we scored players? What if we took these players and we gave them a number, and then we put all the like numbers together? That would be way better than setting out content and telling people that the purpose was fun. That would be way better. Let's just start segmenting people onto islands and forcing them to play on their own island. Let's just do this separate but equal dungeon score system. I know they're trying to make the community less hostile. I don't know that they've quite nailed how to do so. And I think that it's very frustrating when you go into a game to relax and you run into friction because either you or the people you're playing with are letting the party down by some set of requirements or some set of expectations that the game really did help you set up. And so the toxicity will be there in any game regardless, but you don't need to set up systems that encourage it and then call those gaming, kinda.